Addendum item number 5. This is the legislative agenda 216.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move item 3 to be part of our 2016 legislative agenda. This is supported by the County Sheriff's Association of the United States as well as County Executives of America. This is a pulsating brake light system that is a deceleration warning. There is some clarification that's needed in our state language, and this will provide that.
And what about item 5? We're taking it in conjunction, which is the regular.
And item 5 as well.
And resolution 2015-92.
Madam Chair,
Motion and a second. Supervisor Miller.
I'd just like to address some of the items that I had some comments on. The first one is the 1% cap. And this 1% cap limits the total primary property taxes for all homeowners to 1% of the limited property value. And I note this protection is strictly for homeowners. It does not impact, it does not protect businesses. There is no protection for other classes such as business and residential rental property, as was brought up earlier. The state general fund had been making up the overage gap by subsidizing the jurisdictions, including Pima County, which had overrun the constitutional cap. This subsidy now has been cut to $1 million per county, so we're still getting a subsidy of $1 million per county from the state. I believe we need to work, I think it's better for us to work with the local jurisdictions that are contributing to the primary property tax, including Pima County, Pima Community College, the school districts, and the city of Tucson, and any other jurisdiction that is imposing a primary property tax. I think it would behoove us to work with them and determine how we split those amounts of overage among the various jurisdictions that contribute, as well as determining how we allocate the $1 million that we're still being subsidized. I personally would like to see this agreed to locally versus putting it back on the state where we have less control. But I understand that this is the where the board wants to go with this. Property tax reduction.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Didn't we already approve this item?
No.
Item 5?
No. We're just
Earlier in the meeting?
No.
That was not the motion that was made on the floor, because that's the way I understood it.
No.
Okay.
No,
I thought it was off.
no, we didn't. It replaces, this replaces that.
I was going to do the motion, frankly, but okay.
And regarding the property tax reduction for the sale, imposing a sales tax for the jail, well, I think this would be a good idea to restructure how we bill our jail costs. I can't support it simply because I don't trust that after we got the sales tax approved, then we'd immediately start increasing the primary property tax rate again. There's no guarantee there. Regarding state cost transfers, again, the $17.3 million, which is affiliated with the state aid to education backfill from the 1% cap. I refer back to item 1. I think that we would be better off figuring this out locally. The $1.1 million Arizona Department of Revenue collection costs, I think it's a reasonable cost for us to bear to pay for the collection and distribution of our tax monies. The $1.1 million on the presidential preference election, I support that. I have been to the legislature, and I'm confident that they will support legislation making these monies or allocating these monies back to Pima County, and I hope that we see that. Regarding the DPS for Border Strike Force, Border Enforcement Initiative, you talk about additional costs once they allocate these monies to us. You're concerned about the additional costs that are imposed on the county, and in this one in particular, you're talking about the prosecution and defense of the individuals that will result from this additional enforcement. I don't see any problem addressing this. However, I would like to note that even on today's agenda, consent item 8, we have been awarded and we are accepting a $350,000 grant from the state to address these anticipated costs related to the Border Strike Force initiative. So it does appear the state is on the same page with us. I see no problem in moving forward and ensuring that any grant monies or actions that the state takes to ensure that we do get compensated for any additional costs. The adequate funding for transportation, I do have some issues with regarding the energy efficient vehicles, penalizing them because we had a 46% increase in fuel efficiency. I do understand this has decreased our revenues. However, I cannot support a gas tax increase or a sales tax until all of the HERF and VLT that we receive back from the state for road repairs are utilized for road repairs. Monies are being moved and diverted, and just because we can legally move these monies doesn't mean we should be moving these monies. And these are outlined in the Roads to Recovery brochure, the various areas that the monies are going. So that's my issue there. And the Department of Transportation Director stated during the budget hearings that we are expecting an 8% increase in the revenues from her this year. However, she stated zero monies are being allocated to pavement preservation this year. Protecting transportation monies from diversion by the state via the sweeps. I support that. I think we should be actively hoping that we are not getting any further sweeps from the state, noting that this year there are none. The RTA sales tax for road repair. I think this makes it very difficult allocating between the jurisdictions by putting a sales tax into the RTA to allocate back to the various jurisdictions for road repair. Again, I get back to the fact that the HERF revenues are not being spent where they should be spent, which is road repair. And this year we saw the issue with the bonds. Some jurisdictions were not receiving as much benefit as others. And how could I support an additional sales tax when the District 1 road monies have been swept by this board every single year since I've been elected? Election integrity, I fully support the update of these laws and agree the laws are outdated, and I support the scanning of ballot images. I think it's a key component of fair and verifiable elections. And specifically, I think the statutes regarding audits should be updated to include the samples of local races, ballot initiatives, and referendums, as we all had to deal with that issue back a month ago. Economic recovery and job creation, and fully in support of any legislation that supports and facilitates economic development efforts that benefit the entire state. And the exchange for legal services, I can't support this because I believe, and what this does is takes out the need for intergovernmental agreement when we work with other agencies, other jurisdictions. I believe we need to leave these IGAs in place. One might think it is an obstacle. However, I believe the trade-off between risk and convenience makes it clear agreements should be in place to ensure there are no misunderstandings or unnecessary risk burden imposed on the taxpayers. The other ones, incompetent and dangerous criminals, sounds reasonable to ensure the safety of the community. And regarding Supervisor Carroll's additional item, I just wanted clarification on that. Is that going to impose any additional requirements on the manufacturers of vehicles, or is this simply a code change for the state?
It's to change and codify that these are allowable in Arizona, as they have recently done in Utah. It will not be mandatory. It will be an option that will be available to consumers in the aftermarket if it's approved by the state legislature.
Okay, thank you. Then I would support that as well. Therefore, while I agree with some of these items in the aggregate, I can't agree to support this resolution for legislative agenda in its entirety. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
I appreciate Supervisor Miller's comments. However, there's a couple questions I'd like to ask just regarding them, because, frankly, I think this is a good legislative agenda for us, although there's many issues here that are difficult, but frankly, that's the situation we face with the state legislature. We can't run from that. We should not run from that. Property tax shift away from counties being able to decide their own destiny and the state sweeping that money have really hurt us and devastated this county and devastated long-term taxpayers like my family. We've been here 7 generations. We hear about other people here who are talking about their own property and stuff, and I'm certainly not just arguing on behalf of the Elias family, but there are families here that have paid in for generations, and the tax inequity that we've suffered has gotten to the point where it's frankly inexcusable on the part of the state legislature. And let me add, the Elias family are good Arizonans who believe that we should support our state, and we have for years. We've been very good about dealing with the cost shifts that have come our way in the past. But there's a point where you become foolish in that, and I think we've reached that point. So, very nice to be a loyal Arizonan, and I intend to stay that the rest of my life. I love this place. It's important to me. But we have to be honest about the way we're being treated right now at the state legislature, and that's unfair, and it's inequitable for our taxpayers, and we suffer. Diversions of HERF money, Mr. Huckleberry, please, let's hear about that, because this is a mythology that we continue to hear, and frankly, I don't think it's true. I'd like to hear your response to that, Mr. Huckleberry, as well.
Madam Chair.
Let Mr. Huckleberry respond to
I'd like
first.
to address whether there were or were not. Thank you, Mr. Elias, for
Absolutely.
trying to
That's what I
clarify
would-
this statement by the district.
Well, and I think we can look forward to future shifts if we, once again, because of the border strike, for other think they may be taking some of the money to pay for that out of HERF. So
I understand that. I just want to make sure that we clarify the record in this discussion, because, you know, somebody went through here and went item by item comment on all of this stuff, and I'm not opposed to that. I'm glad Supervisor Miller did that, but let's deal with reality.
And I think the other point as we're looking at this particular issue is the distinction between HERF revenues and the pavement preservation general fund revenues that we had for several years used in with the $18 million, well, 22 by the time we got finished with all the cost shifts that we got from the state. We simply lacked the resources to continue that general fund allocation. Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board, with regard to HERF diversions and whether they continue, they do. I believe they reached a peak of about $180 million a year statewide. There was legislation approximately 2 years ago that actually reduced that diversion by $30 million. And at the time they passed the budget, they pledged to reduce it by another $30 million. That additional $30 million never took place. So there continues to be a diversion of HERF to the Department of Public Safety, federal significant. And I think on top of that, we've heard that part of the plan to fund the border strike force at anywhere from $20 to $30 million may come out of HERF additionally. So HERF diversions continue. There was a plan to try and reduce them. That plan was abandoned, and that diversion continues today.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Carroll.
As I heard Supervisor Miller state that there were no HERF sweeps this year, you're saying that there were, and you have, that's reliable information versus where did you get the information that there were no HERF sweeps?
Madam Chair, I'm talking about
Supervisor Miller.
specific from Pima County. The DPS has been funded by those monies for years, and that is not a sweep. It's what is diverted back to, what it comes back to Pima County. I don't think we can expect to have DPS funds restored. I think there's a disagreement over who funds what. However, DPS is, how long have they been funded out of these funds? For many, many years out of the HERF funds. At the top level, it's, and then once the monies are sent back to Pima County after DPS has been funded, $53 million per year on average for the past 10 years, correct?
Madam Chair, DPS has been in and out of the HERF fund over the years. We have a couple of legislators, one sitting at the dais and one sitting in the audience, and that those diversions of HERF to the Department of Public Safety substantially increased during the economic decline, and they've not been abated. They were slightly abated in 1 year. The legislature would have pledged to abate them by another $30 million. That never happened. They continue to be abated. All other jurisdictions, including county and the cities, pay for their police agencies out of their general fund.
And there's no reason to pay for
We've
her
got
revenues.
$53 million per year on average back to Pima County and her funds. That is directly from the Department of Transportation.
That is
That
not
was,
relevant to the
Madam-
question.
Madam
That-
Chair, that wasn't my question. My question was, please clarify whether or not there were HERF sweeps to Mr. Huckleberry, and contrary to what Supervisor Miller had said. And he has said that there have been. I thank you for the clarification this morning. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
I would just comment that, there's a lot of go back and forth between people about this year's budget, but it certainly was not reassuring to me when the whole thing was done at 3 o'clock in the morning on a secret deal that frankly no one was included on, and many members of the legislature didn't even have a chance to review that information. That just kind of gives you the impression that you're making a deal with Slim Shady. And that's not the right way to conduct business. It should be conducted in the light of day so that everybody understands, instead of putting us in a situation where a county that has been at odds with the state on many issues all of a sudden gets burned in the middle of the night with no information. Like I said, that's just childish and frankly gives one an impression that perhaps we're not dealing with people who have good intentions for all the residents of Arizona.
Supervisor Valdez.
Madam Chair, if I may address a few of the issues. I'm the only member of this board who's actually had the
Don't say pleasure, don't say pleasure.
the honor of serving our community in the legislature. How's that?
Oh, that's fine.
And I will tell you that the DPS funding came about because we had a significant shortfall in our sales tax back in about 2002. And back then, that happened through discussions with the counties and the cities. That was an agreement we all came to. It was further restored in subsequent years. Subsequent to that, there was an agreement that there was I believe, a $10 million cap not to exceed being taken out of PERF for DPS. And that agreement has never been honored. Never. It was never the intention of the legislature, and there's another former colleague in the audience with me who keeps nodding yes when I'm making these statements. But there was never an intention of having it be an ongoing diversion. That was just never supposed to happen. Now, is it convenient? Well, not for the cities and towns and counties, but it sure as heck is convenient for the state. Let's also not forget that for a year or more, the legislature thought it was convenient to fund MVD through HERF as well. And last I checked, MVD was a self-funding agency. So the truth is that we can make an argument that we should be funding out of local funds, but the truth is that's a cop-out. It's nothing more than a cop-out. When we look at the legislative agenda for the upcoming year, it's important to remember, and frankly, I don't think a lot of people have taken the time to learn the facts. And the fact is, folks, of our primary property taxes, 1/3, a full third of our primary property taxes in Pima County goes directly to the state. This board's not deciding where it goes. You aren't deciding where it goes. The legislature already decided where it goes. Same with the DPS funding through HERF. So the truth is, I think that this legislative agenda is necessary because I think it's important to, and I believe one of my colleagues earlier in an earlier vote talked about the importance of allowing local communities to govern. And you know what? On this point, I agree. So let's go ahead and pass this legislative agenda, and let's stand up for the people of Pima County. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Huffman, did you wish to comment since you were at the legislature? Or are you in the agenda in general?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Supervisors. My name is Steve Huffman. I'm here representing the Tucson Association of Realtors. And I really came here to talk about one specific item on your legislative agenda. I think you have a good legislative agenda in general, which is the sales tax, but I'm going to get cancer if I don't talk about some of these other things. So, but I think there is a common theme, and the common theme of my comments is the legislature is as much of a problem as they are a solution to things that we're trying to deal with in the state. And if I could just clarify what Supervisor Valadez also said, already said, we in the legislature at the time frame he was talking about, we were under some financial constraints, and it is state law to this day. It's still in the state law. The legislature has never repealed it ever. That says there's a maximum of $10 million that can be taken from the HERF funds to use in support of the Department of Public Safety. The reason we said that is because we said, look, I mean, it was really about the money, but we said, look, you got to have DPS officers on the roads if you want to have safe roads. Safe roads are important. The compromise was made in agreement with cities and towns and counties that they said we could all live with that, and we think $10 million is a fair trade to have safe roads. Every year when the legislature passes the budget and they sweep these funds, in the budget language, every single year, there's a clause in there, and you can look it up, and it says, notwithstanding ARS section whatever, we're going to sweep this money. What that essentially means for people who don't speak legislativese is if I said, notwithstanding the law, I'm going to punch Ramon in the face and you can't arrest me for assault. That's what the legislature does every single year. They say we're just going to ignore the law because we write the law, so we're not going to repeal the law. We're just going to say that we get to ignore it this year, and they do it year in and year out. And that is a huge problem. If they think that this is a good long-term solution, then repeal the law. Go sit down with the cities and towns and counties and say, hey, guess what? The world's changed. We are no longer going to follow this law, and we're going to repeal this law, and we're going to do whatever we want. Leaving the law in the books and then ignoring it is not only bad fiscal policy, it's disrespect for the law and the legal process, and that just drives me crazy. The other thing that I will tell you is on this issue on your legislative agenda, and I wasn't going to talk about this either, but this just drives me nuts. For the legislature to charge us as a county, and that is dishonest in and of itself. The county is me. I'm a taxpayer in the county. There's no magic pot of money that the county has that doesn't come from me or businesses in Pima County. So when the legislature says we're going to take money from Pima County, they're taking it from me. Well, here's a news flash for the legislature. I pay my taxes every single year. My taxes go in part to pay for the Department of Revenue, to hire those people to collect money from me and distribute it according to law for all the different things that they're supposed to do. When they take taxes from me to support the Department of Revenue, that's supposed to be supporting the Department of Revenue. They don't get to say, hey, we already charged Steve, but now we're going to charge the county, who, guess what, is me again. I already paid once. Now I'm having to pay twice for the same services that they promised they were going to cover when I paid my income taxes to the state. To sit there, the system that they have, they use every business as an unpaid tax collector for the state. And if you're a business and you don't submit those sales taxes when you're supposed to, you're going to have serious problems. And you don't get a penny for being a tax collector for the state. So the system we have uses businesses as tax collectors. They don't compensate them. They charge me to set up the bureaucracy to collect those taxes. And now they're asking you to charge me again to give the money back to you. And what's even more offensive about coming from Pima County is we don't even have a county sales tax. We don't even have a county sales tax. And they're charging us to distribute money that we don't even collect. I mean, only in the legislature would that make sense. So that's my two things on those. But to get back to, if you want to start with 3 minutes, so I don't take
Okay.
it. To get back to the issue that I wanted to talk to you about, one item in particular on the legislative agenda is the half cent dedicated, is this the right time?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. The half cent sales tax, the half cent county sales tax that you have on your legislative agenda, it is a very important discussion that we should be having every single year here in Pima County about how much money we are spending in Pima County, and that's directly going to drive the tax rate. But I think it's also important to ask, who are you taxing and what's the consequences of the taxes that you're levying? Maybe in the past it made sense because of the stability of the tax base to rely exclusively on property taxes. But I think it no longer makes sense. If you look at the property tax system that we have, really the only part of that whole entire system that you guys have any influence over is the rate that you set. You don't really control the valuation, you don't control the property class taxation system, you don't control the assessment ratios. You turn over a huge amount of authority over what your tax system looks like to the state legislature that you have absolutely no control over. If the property tax was really just a local property tax and we were just using it for local things that we had to pay, that still might even make sense. But that has changed dramatically. In the last few years, both voters and the legislature have changed where valuations can go. So there's increasing pressure to slow down those valuations, which is automatically going to mean that you're going to have to start raising rates. The legislature has made lots of changes, the changing of the 1% cap. All of these things are increasingly going to put pressure on every county in the state to have to start raising rates to keep up with the artificial slowdown. That's not even talking about the 1/3 that's being shifted of state programs that you're now expected to pay for. So I think it's worthwhile for all of you to take a look at diversifying our tax stream. Look at a sales tax that we can use directly to lower the property taxes. I think it would be a sign of good faith with the voters who quite honestly looked like they weren't real happy with the bond questions and the current property tax rates that we have. It would be the one thing that you guys could do that would directly lower those property tax rates. And you know, whether the legislature takes action on this or not, I would tell you, as hard as it is, you guys can still do it with the unanimous vote. And I know that sounds impossible, but if you have a unanimous vote, that means everybody has a veto vote. And if you're concerned about moving money from one place to the other, make that a condition of it. If you're concerned about the impact of sales tax on lower income people that are stressed, we can work through all these things. But I think we need to work through as a community because the legislature is going to make things worse. The property tax system is not going to get better, and it is no longer smart or safe or reliable to rely exclusively on a property tax for a county this big. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this item? There is a motion on the floor. There's no further discussion. Roll call.
Supervisor Carroll.
Aye.
Supervisor Reeves.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Supervisor Valadez.
Aye.
Chair Bonds.
Aye, motion carries 4-1.